Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mike. You guys are rocking with me on Mike's Intellectual Corner. On today's episode, we are going to be doing a new series from Epic History. This is the Belisarius series that the new one that he started doing. This is part 1, the Emperor's Sword. Without further ado, we're just going to get right into it. So let's go.
532 AD. Constantinople, the greatest city in the world, is in flames. But this is no barbarian attack. Citizens of the Eastern Roman Empire are rioting, murdering state officials and setting buildings on fire. Trapped inside his own palace, Emperor Justinian fears his reign is over. He's already given in to the mob's demands and sacked his most hated officials. But now, the crowds acclaim a new emperor, Hypatius. It's his wife, Empress Theodora, who'll give him the courage to act. And his most trusted general, Belisarius, to whom he'll turn to crush his enemies and save the regime.
Okay, see, I know who, I was thinking maybe, but I know who Belisarius is now. So if you guys ever seen this painting before, the one who's standing, I think, right to the left of him, with the kind of weird haircut right here, that's Belisarius. That's his most trusted general. So now it makes sense. It's actually pretty cool. Let's get back into it.
After centuries of imperial crisis, Justinian's reign will witness a Roman fightback that few had dreamed possible. Great victories over the barbarians, the reconquest of Rome itself, the reunification of the empire. Belisarius is the commander who will lead this onslaught. He will be remembered as Rome's last great general.
Yeah, unfortunately though, around the end of that whenever they actually conquered out west, is when that Black Plague, when the plague of Justinian hit, which like crushed it, like just pretty much derailed everything. Pretty much the first sighting of the Black Plague in Europe. So this is obviously like 500, almost millennia before the actual Black Plague, the famous Black Plague that hit. Like.
527 AD. It's more than 50 years since the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Rome itself, the Eternal City, is now part of an Ostrogothic kingdom of Italy. But though Rome may have fallen, the empire endures. The Eastern Roman Empire remains a force to be reckoned with. An estimated 30 million people live under the rule of the emperor in Constantinople. His authority stretches from the ravaged Balkans to the imperial breadbasket, Egypt.
Yeah, in my opinion, obviously, whenever Rome fell, or the western part fell, eastern part kind of got, already got the best part of it anyway, with just for the fact of getting Egypt, because that's like the breadbasket alone, so.
The Arabian desert to the mountains of Armenia. This Christian empire remains unrivaled in administrative sophistication, economic power, and military might.
If I'm not mistaken, though, they're in war with them, like a constant state of war throughout the entire century, but it just stopped right before the Russian Caliphate started doing their thing and gobbling up the Byzantine Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire, but let's see.
Military might. But the new emperor, Justinian, faces formidable challenges. In 527, he succeeds Justin, his uncle and adopted father, becoming the first son to succeed his father as emperor in more than a century. Justinian is from a tough peasant background in Thrace, what's now Serbia. He's highly educated, restless and driven, and sets himself 2 ambitious goals. First, to restore harmony in the Christian Church by ending the schism between Chalcedonian or Orthodox Christians and Miaphysites, who argue over Christ's human and divine nature. Second, to reform and rationalize Roman law, the divinely sanctioned institution that distinguishes the Roman world from the barbarian. The imperial majesty should not only be adorned with arms, but also be armed with laws, so that there may be good government in times both of war and peace, he later declares. But as for any Roman emperor, the ultimate test of his legitimacy will come in war.
Yeah, and it's sad that in ancient times, to test somebody's legitimacy would have to be war, even down to the lowest person fighting the war in the warriors. You know what I'm saying? To test somebody's worth in society, it'd have to be some type of war or something like that. Obviously we have our philosophers and stuff, but I feel like I wish that they would put a bigger emphasis on the philosopher part on it. You know what I'm saying? Instead of the war part. But war is still pretty cool though.
Will come in war. For now, Justinian has good relations with the Vandals in North Africa and the Ostrogoths in Italy. The Balkan frontier requires constant vigilance. The successors to Attila's Hun Empire are never quiet for long. But it's in the east that Justinian faces his most immediate challenge: the Persian Sassanid Empire, a rival superpower of the Middle East. This frontier has been a battleground for centuries and witnessed its share of Roman defeats, including one emperor captured, another killed.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, that one that was killed, if you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure he had gold poured down his throat or something like that, and then right before that, his entire army was slaughtered and thrown into some type of river or lake or something like that. The entire legion
captured, another killed. For most of the last century, the shared menace of the Huns led to a wary coexistence. But it could not last. In 525, the Christian king of Iberia in the Caucasus appealed to the Romans for aid when the Persian king Kavad tried to impose Zoroastrian rituals on his country. The Romans send military aid, and the conflict escalates, with both sides launching cross-border raids.
It's kind of sad that they couldn't put away their differences. Obviously, they're not fortune tellers. They didn't know what was coming. Just a century later, the monster that was building, just south of them in the desert, they didn't know what was coming, and unfortunately, they were literally just picking themselves apart, because by the time the Caliphate came, they were already gone through a whole century worth of warring, and you know what I'm saying? So, if anything, this is just showing us why it was so easy for them to get picked off the way that they were.
Launching cross-border raids. When the Romans begin building a new fort at Minduos, the Persians attack, rout the Roman troops, and destroy the building works. One of the Roman generals to escape this debacle is Flavius Belisarius. Clearly he is not blamed, because the next year Justinian makes him commander of all Roman troops in the east, though he's barely 30 years old. Belisarius and the emperor are old comrades, and come from the same humble background in Thrace. He had served in Justinian's own regiment when he was still heir to the throne. His wife Antonina is the best friend of Empress Theodora, and like her, from a dubious background in the acting profession. With both Roman and Persian empires mobilizing for war, the next year, 530, will see Belisarius' first major test as a commander.
Yeah, so it's kind of crazy too, because we can actually see, just in the ancient times, if you were a general, you were pretty much, right-hand man, right under pretty much an advisor. If not, you were an advisor, so you can see how important he truly was, you know what I'm saying?
The troops that Belisarius commands are far removed from the famous legions with which Rome conquered its empire centuries ago. Hard lessons learned from fighting Huns and Persians have helped to forge a new Roman army. For centuries, cavalry was the neglected arm of the Roman military, a role usually outsourced to foreign auxiliaries. Now, heavy armoured cavalry known as Clibanarii and Cataphracti, armed with lance and sword, form the army's elite shock units.
I mean, if anything, that just kind of proves just how good the old Roman legionary actually was, to be able to conquer so much and take down so many foes without even using really horses as a main tactic. Because as we can see, horses is a very good way to win a lot of battles and stuff like that, until we start seeing, you know, different tactics of how to, you know, get away from that by using the squares and stuff like that. But back in these days, I'm pretty sure they weren't using squares and stuff like that, so they were just getting pummeled. And if you use it the right way to flank them, it's you know, unmatched. So they really were missing out, but they were still able to conquer so much.
Form the army's elite shock units. Some armoured cavalry, as well as cursores, light cavalry, also carry bows. The Romans, in imitation of the Huns and Persians, are now horse archers themselves. The best units are the Bucellarii, the biscuit eaters, named after the army ration. These hand-picked soldiers form a general's personal regiment. Long service, good pay and equipment, plus a personal oath of loyalty make them his most reliable troops. Roman archers are now armed with the more powerful composite reflex bows of the Huns. And while infantry still made up around 2/3 of a Roman army, its role is more defensive, forming a secure base from which the cavalry could launch its attacks. The standard infantry unit is also smaller, called a numerus in Latin, arithmos in Greek, about regimental size, from 1,000 to 1,500 men. They're more mixed, with armoured...
I know this is a small little piece of it, but I like the detail that they put in this video, because if you guys notice, they have a mixture of warriors in there with a mixture of mixed skin. Like, there's black troops, there's white troops. But you guys gotta remember, this is ancient times. Like, I know a lot of people like to think, like, you know, Romans and stuff like that were like just like cut and dry. They were just straight European. No, that was a very huge empire that was around for a very long time. So people travel and they live and, you know what I'm saying? So it makes sense that like that, you know what I'm saying? It's more historically accurate in my opinion, that's all.
They're more mixed, with armoured veterans to form a fulcrum or shield wall, and more missile troops behind them to unleash a barrage of arrows, javelins and darts. Finally, Rome boosts its military strength by recruiting the very barbarians it had once despised, including Huns, Goths and Heruli. Those outside the empire are recruited as mercenaries. Those within serve as foederati, federates, and are usually commanded by their own officers.
And I know that was a really good big change to their army, because beforehand they really didn't do that as much, depend on mercenaries like that. But a really big change with the Byzantines is, you know, they're like, no, we're going to use you guys. And it makes sense, because if you think about it, these are the warriors from you know, the other people, your enemy's land, so they're mercenaries. So you can, if you want, you can use them and be like, hey, you know, what's this, that, and that on this land. You can use them for, you know, geography terms. You can use them for all that stuff. So, you know, it just makes sense.
By their own officers. The military organization of the empire has also been overhauled. Two central field armies stationed on either side of the Bosphorus are commanded by a Magister Militum Presentalis and form a strategic reserve. Field armies based in Thrace, Illyria, Armenia and the East are each commanded by a Magister Militum and form regional rapid reaction forces. The frontiers are held by the Limitani. These are the lowest paid and least well-equipped troops, only expected to hold their fortified outposts until reinforcements arrive. Limitani are organized into local groups, each commanded by a dux, origin of our word, duke.
See, and I would think that they would put one of those huge armies down there by Egypt, on the southern parts, so that way they know ain't nothing gonna freaking take this freaking part of this jewel from us, you know what I'm saying? But I guess they just thought to themselves, writing, if a little writing party gets in here, it's not the biggest issue, but, what about huge armies is my thing.
Of our word, Duke. Yet the thought has many times occurred to me, how many and how great are the benefits which accrue to states through history, which transmits to future generations the memory of those who have gone before, and resists the steady effort of time to bury events in oblivion. The historian Procopius is our key witness for the events of this period. He was born around 500 in the city of Caesarea in Palestine and received a first-class education. In 527, he was appointed assessor, or legal advisor, to Belisarius. He effectively became the general's secretary, and on occasion, aide-de-camp.
I feel like that would be such an amazing position to have in history. Like, if you're going to live in ancient times, wouldn't you want to be able to be the one who, not only, you can tell he probably has a pampered life, but to be able to be the one who sits there and writes history out, you know what I'm saying? And this is all there's going to be. So when people find this in 1,500 years, 1,000 years, 2,000 years, you know what I'm saying, this is it. And I get to be the one who writes it. And they, you know what I'm saying, and let them know how great our people are and how great this battle. Yeah, it's so cool. You know what I'm saying? I would definitely like to be in that position if I was ever in history and stuff like that.
Aide-de-camp. Working from notes and writing in Greek, he would publish his great work, History of the Wars, in 551. Procopius's account is highly favourable to Belisarius, but there will be a sting in the tale, a scandalous, secret history, which will emerge later in the tale. 530 AD. King Kavad sends an army to capture the Roman frontier fortress at Dara. Today, the ruins of Dara lie on the Turkish-Syrian border, their scale hinting at the size of the Roman fortress that once stood here.
And if anything, that should tell everyone just how strong and magnificent this fortress really was. Because I mean, think about it. To be able to still be here, be standing, and he even by what he was saying, the ruins are still pretty freaking huge. So you can see it's pretty cool to think just what it probably looked like in its heyday.
The Roman fortress that once stood here. Belisarius is warned that 40,000 Persian troops are advancing on Dara. He can only assemble 25,000 troops to meet them. For reasons that are unclear, Belisarius decides to make his stand outside the city walls to the south. His men dig ditches to strengthen their position, with both flanks thrown forward. The infantry is placed in the centre, with cavalry on both flanks. Two groups of 600 Hun mercenaries are positioned between them in support. At the rear, he places his reserve, his own Bucellari. When the huge Persian army arrives before Dara, Belisarius is ready and waiting. The first day begins with a standoff. The two generals exchange letters. Belisarius urges Firuz to withdraw, to allow time for further negotiations. Firuz tells the Roman to prepare.
First of all, can you guys just imagine being a soldier at that time? Like, do you guys think that you'd be either nervous or just like adrenaline pumping? You know what I'm saying? You're doing a standoff right now, so you know what I'm saying? It ain't gonna, we're here for a reason, we're not gonna leave, so war is about to pop off, battle is about to pop off, so would you guys be nervous or scared at this point? My thing is also, I'm pretty sure Epic History uses the same people that Kings and Generals uses. I just noticed that for some reason, but definitely the same people, because it definitely feels like I'm watching a Total War game right now. Which, now that I think about it, I'm about to play that when I'm done with this. But let's go ahead and keep.
Firuz tells the Roman to prepare his bath. He intends to be in Dara by nightfall. The Persians launch one probing attack against the Roman left wing, perhaps testing their defences. The Persians are driven off, with 7 killed. when a young Persian warrior rides between the lines and challenges any Roman to face him in single combat. His offer is accepted by Andreas. Andreas has no military training, but he's a wrestling instructor of huge strength. Before the Persian knows what's happening, Andreas has knocked him off his horse with his lance, then dismounts to finish him off, like a sacrificial animal, in the words of Procopius. Andreas later kills a second Persian challenger, to Roman cheers and the dismay of the Persians.
Kind of crazy that they even stopped to even let that happen, because, you know, obviously as a Persian, you see something like that happen to your brother, and you think that they would just all just say this and just bum rush him, but, you know what I'm saying, I guess not. So.
To Roman cheers and the dismay of the Persians. The next morning, Firuz receives 10,000 reinforcements, bringing his total strength to 50,000. With odds of 2 to 1 in his favour, he decides to attack. Firuz forms up his army, with infantry and foot archers in the centre, and his Persian heavy cavalry, the feared Savaran, on both wings. He also divides his army into 2 parts, a front line and a reserve line, so that fresh troops can be rotated into the fighting. He keeps a unit of immortals, the elite Persian heavy cavalry, as his personal reserve. But first, he waits. He knows the Romans usually eat in the morning, and are growing hungry, while his own troops are accustomed to eating later in the day. Finally, at noon, he gives the order. The Persian army advances to within bowshot, and both armies unleash a storm of arrows. Persia is famed for the skill of its archers, but today, the wind favours the Romans. When the archers run out of arrows, the Persian cavalry begins its advance. This is the moment Belisarius has prepared for. The Savaran crash into his left wing, driving the Roman horsemen back. But the Persians haven't spotted 300 Heruli horsemen hidden behind a slope on the Roman left, waiting for this moment. They rush out from cover and attack the Persian cavalry from behind. Then 600 Huns.
See, that has to be the perfect plan. You know, always, whenever you're dealing with a military plan, is whenever you have somebody just rushing right, forward on you, you have somebody there to use to flank them from the sides and the back, from the, you know what I'm saying? And it always works, because it's very disorienting having to, claustrophobia, you get disoriented, you know what I'm saying? You literally feel like it's crazy, so it always works, so.
Then 600 Huns fall on their flank. Under this onslaught, the Persian cavalry turns and flees, with heavy losses. Firuz switches to the other flank, attacking with his heavy cavalry, supported by the elite immortals. The Roman cavalry breaks under the pressure, streaming back to the walls of Dara. But Belisarius has seen the threat. He recalls the Huns that are pursuing the Persian right wing, and launches both Hun groups, as well as his own Bukellari, against the flank and rear of the Persian attack.
Seeing right now too, you were able to see just how good their communication was, because to be able to call them back and tell them like, hey, you guys need to do this now, obviously with no radios, no nothing, they're probably doing it with horns or flags, and they're able to pay attention, one, not get caught up and get their blinders on from war, but they're able to pay attention and, get it done. So that's pretty cool that they had that type of communication at the time, you know what I'm saying?
Bukellari against the flank and rear of the Persian attack. It's the decisive moment of the battle. The Persian left wing suddenly finds itself under attack from 3 sides. Those that can't escape are cut down. Sunikas, one of the Hun captains, kills a Persian standard-bearer, then General Barsham himself, who commands the Persian left wing. With the elite units of the Persian army in flight, the infantry offers little resistance. Most are peasant conscripts, no match for Roman cavalry. Soon the entire Persian army is en route.
Yeah, see, and that's the thing about cavalry too. It doesn't matter how many soldiers you have. If you have a good, a good amount of cavalry and it has a good charge, it's always going to freaking break through. Unless you have, it's set up into a square, it's always going to mess up that infantry rank or whatever. It's just too much.
The entire Persian army is en route. Belisarius, content with his victory and unwilling to risk any last-minute reverse, halts the pursuit. Procopius tells us 8,000 Persians lay dead on the battlefield, a number that could be accurate. For on that day, the Persians had been defeated in battle by the Romans, a thing which had not happened for a long time. Belisarius has won a brilliant victory for the empire. Later that year, Citas, Magister Militum of Armenia, wins another victory over the Persians at Satala. The war is swinging in Rome's favor. But the following year, encouraged by a Samaritan revolt in Palestine, King Kavad orders a large-scale raid along the Euphrates River. Belisarius assembles an army to meet them. But having ravaged Roman territory, the Persians are content to withdraw with their loot. Belisarius shadows them. His subordinates urge him to destroy the enemy before they escape. So, against his better judgment, he attacks the Persians on Easter Sunday at Callinicum.
Yeah, and obviously that's the problem with listening to... obviously it's good to listen to people who are under you, but you have to do it, you have to be able to weigh the option. And if you know your gut's telling you don't do this, there's no reason to do this, you probably shouldn't do this, but let's see what happens.
Easter Sunday at Callinicum. The battle is a disaster. Rome's Arab allies, the Sassanids, hold the right flank. But Procopius accuses them of fleeing at the first sign of danger. Persian cavalry rolls up the entire Roman line.
I guess that's the problem with buying mercenaries off and stuff like that, because you gotta remember they're working off money. They don't really give a crap about your empire or anything, so...
Roman line. In desperation, the Roman infantry form a shield wall with their backs to the river. They hold off the enemy cavalry, buying time for the remains of the army to escape across the river. Callinicum is a humiliation for Rome and for Belisarius. His own role in the battle is unclear. According to Procopius, he remained with the infantry, organizing the retreat. Another source claims he was among the first to flee. It had clearly been a serious blunder to give in to pressure from his subordinates to fight an unnecessary battle. Belisarius is removed from command and recalled to Constantinople. Justinian is forced to pay a subsidy and make a compromise peace with Persia. Not with King Kavad, who dies that year, but with his 20-year-old son, Khosrow. Khosrow will prove to be the greatest of all Sasanian kings, hailed as Anushirvan, the immortal soul, and will prove a dangerous rival to the Romans.
And yet, neither one of them know that they're essentially running on borrowed times, and they're just eating each other away, you know what I'm saying? So that the Sassanid, or part of the Eastern Roman Empire, dissolves first, and then the entirety of the Sassanid Empire then leads to the rest of the Eastern Roman Empire eventually being swallowed up almost a millennia later. But, yeah.
When major rioting breaks out in Constantinople the next year, Belisarius is in the capital, eager to restore his tarnished reputation. The riots have been instigated by the factions of the Hippodrome, the Greens and Blues. These are more than chariot racing fans. The factions run whole areas of the city. At first, they seek only the release of jailed comrades. But then there are calls for a new emperor, Hypatius, nephew of Emperor Anastasius. It's likely that Justinian's rivals in the Senate are now pulling the strings. Justinian hesitates. He wonders if they should flee.
Yeah, we can definitely say, I feel like Justinian, I mean, his entire reign was marked with a whole bunch of strife, because I think even the way he got in was he hired, essentially, a mercenary army to get him back into the whatchamacallit, and then when he couldn't pay them, they essentially took over the city and then, were driven out. It's crazy, his entire story, but yeah.
He wonders if they should flee the capital. Then Theodora speaks up. Life as a fugitive, she declares, would be unendurable. Better the old saying, royal purple makes a noble shroud. In other words, better to go down fighting. The emperor is emboldened by Theodora's words, and orders Belisarius and another general, Mundus, to crush the revolt. Belisarius's hardened troops launch a sudden attack on the rioters. There is no mercy. The streets run with blood.
Can you guys imagine if something like that happened today? You know what I'm saying? Because you guys got to think about it. Them riding on the Capitol is essentially almost exactly what happened last January. You know what I'm saying? They rioted on the Capitol. Could you guys imagine if something like this happened? The army that was sent there just said F it and just started, you know what I'm saying? That would have been like, yeah, no. It'd been like almost an act of war on ourselves. That'd been crazy.
The streets run with blood. The final death toll is estimated at 30,000, a staggering 1 in 20 of the city's population. The next day, Justinian orders the execution of Hypatius and his brother, probably innocent pawns in somebody else's plot. Their bodies are tossed into the sea. Thanks to Theodora and Belisarius, Justinian's throne is safe, for now.
I kind of wish that they would have did his artwork on his face a little bit different, because I think on the painting he has sadder, droopier eyes, but the one because the face that they went with kind of looks like somebody's dirty uncle. For some reason, I don't like it that much, but yeah.
For now. A Roman emperor relied on one quality more than any other from his generals: loyalty. Belisarius has proved his beyond doubt. Now, Justinian needs to shore up support for his regime, assert his legitimacy and God's favour with a military victory. He has his costly peace with the Sassanid Empire, so he will turn west. A war to reclaim Rome's lost provinces from the barbarians will be a service to God and Justinian. Such a mission can be entrusted to only one man: Belisarius.
Yeah, and they get it done. I think they only were able to hold it for like 20 years or something like that. It was not long at all, I'm telling you. Roman hands.
Massive thanks to Legendarian for providing our...
Alright guys, we'll go ahead and end it right there. So yeah, another great, magnificent video from Epic History TV. I wish I had the money and the know-how to be able to work my computer to be able to put together these type of stories instead of the ones that I do with, just being able to put together footage and stuff like that. But hey, again guys, thank you again for joining me on another episode of Mike's Intellectual Corner. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you guys in another one. I'm out. Peace.